Good evening. Greetings of peace on behalf of Raj Yoga Center. We are so happy to see house full of beautiful people present here today. So a little bit about our dear speaker today, Charlie Hogg. He is the board of directors and facilitating meditation, teaching meditations since 1975. Charlie Hogg started his journey in early 20s, and then he's been looking after the centers in Australia, the Raj Yoga centers. He's also traveled to many places in teaching meditation. I called our lovely sister Suchitra to come and present beautiful bouquet on behalf of all of us to Charlie Hogg.
Good evening. It's so lovely for me to be here, and I'd love to thank Bhargavi for her beautiful introduction. And what I would really love to do tonight is to share a few of my thoughts about this subject. And then we will have some time for some questions. And I think, as you know, in this place that we love to finish with a little bit of reflection and meditation. But maybe before we begin, I'd love to ask, has anyone come for the first time? Can I ask? Oh, many. A very, very special welcome to you. Actually, I'm not a counselor. I'm not a psychologist. But I have actually been learning and teaching meditation for around 45 years. And what that means really is I meet so many people and I listen to so many people about their lives. And I find that scratch the surface of most human beings and two things become very apparent. So many of us carry so many stories in our hearts about our relationships and so many feelings about relationships. But just as much, I think, we carry many regrets about life. And personally, I think that regrets are a part of human life. The problem is that we often don't know what to do with those regrets, or don't have a methodology or a strategy to begin to reduce the effect of regrets. And I would say that a part of the spiritual journey is really learning to acknowledge those regrets and starting to diffuse the effect of them. What I'd love to do first of all, and I can see people are still trying to get into into the hall, so I hope there's enough seats for everybody. But I'd love us just to have a little bit of quiet reflection. And if just for a minute, if I can request everyone put down phones and books and things like that. And we're just going to play a little bit of soft music, and I'm just going to suggest a few thoughts to think. Let me sit quietly. We have all come from busy days. So let me just feel myself calming down. Just feel your mind cooling down, and enjoy this sweet atmosphere. We are all sitting in the present, but in the subconscious of each and everyone in this room, we carry countless memories that sit neatly in my memory track. My whole past is recorded within me. I have memories of love, beautiful memories of belonging, touching memories of being cared for and respected. But I also carry memories that sometimes hurt my heart. I remember what I said to somebody, and instantly I can feel regret. I can remember what I did to some I love. And feel more regret. Sometimes I even remember what I didn't do. When I could have helped or supported, I didn't. And these regrets sometimes emerge feelings of sadness, even self-dislike, and sometimes anger at myself. The inner journey, the journey about learning about myself and who I am, is also about learning about these regrets and with wisdom, honesty, and self-respect, I begin to heal these feelings I carry from the past. The more I heal my regrets, I can know true peace. Peace is the highest state of the human mind. It's a state of wisdom, an expression of my true self. So thank you, everybody. Did you feel the atmosphere change a little bit just in those few minutes? It's wonderful, isn't it, how when a group of us together, just with a little effort, pay attention to our thoughts, we can transform an atmosphere. I think all of us have regrets. Is there anyone here who doesn't have any regrets? I think it is a part of life. And I remember meeting a woman in Australia, in Melbourne, and she had contracted cancer. She was a mother of one of my friends. And doctors had told her that she wasn't going to survive. And I went to see her. And we were having a very lovely chat. She was a very open and warm person. And I just suddenly said to her, and you know, sometimes things just come into your mind. I don't know where it came from. I said, is there anything inside that you regret? And the second I said that, a little tear just went pop, just popped into the corner of her eye. And she said that there was a family member that she had fallen out with and hadn't really spoken to for 15 years. And she was soon going to pass on, and she had accepted that. And I listened quietly for a little while, and then I said, well, if I was you, I'm not you, but if I was you, I would love to go and meet that person. And she said, oh, it would be very difficult. And I said that, you know, you don't want to move on carrying this regret that you didn't reach out. So with courage, she went and met this family member. And when I saw her again, she said that it wasn't perfect, but she was so happy that she went to see this person. There was some resolution, and she said she felt like the heaviness of regret, the weight of that left her shoulders. Many years ago too, I used to teach meditation at the main jail in Sydney. And there was a special prison they had in the jail, encouraging prisoners to behave better. And so what they had a point system, and if you obeyed the rules and you did the right things, you got points. If you were naughty and you did the wrong things, you lost points. And so I went along, and there was only 15 in this little prison because the whole thing was to encourage good behaviour. And all 15 came for meditation. And I thought, oh, this is wonderful. They're really interested in meditation. Then I found out they got points for coming. They wanted to get the points. But I was actually doing this session, and one man, I asked for questions. He spoke so emotionally. He was incredibly articulate and intelligent. And he said, you know, I have this huge regret in my life. I can't control my temper. And when I lose my temper, I lose control, and I killed somebody. And he said, even I've tried so many things, I can't let go of what I've done. And so the lady was able to resolve her regrets. Sometimes the regrets seem to live so strongly in our mind. And even I was remembering that when my mother passed on, one of my father's friends, she passed on rather suddenly, it wasn't expected. And one of my father's friends came over to see him straight away as soon as he heard. And it was a really wonderful conversation because he said to my father, now don't start to think, oh, I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd said this, I wish I hadn't said this. Because actually my father was an extraordinarily good husband and father. But you know how we tend to think what we didn't do? We don't remember that I spent a lifetime loving, caring, supporting. The human nature is often to regret and dwell on those regrets. And what really is regret? Regret is like unfinished business. It's like the unresolved stories of the past that sit in my subconscious. Sometimes I think it's like a outstanding debt that you haven't paid. You know, in the old days when they had account ledgers, if there was a debt, it would be in red. You know how they used to... It's almost like it's in my memory track in red. Something is not really resolved. Regret is like blaming myself for bad outcomes. Things don't work out and I blame myself for them. And sometimes with regret, we just hope or wish this thing hadn't happened when it had happened. And it's an extraordinary part of the human psyche. Because one of the things I'm always fascinated by in our contemporary world, we are so educated about the world outside, but we are so uneducated about the world inside. You know, we don't know much about how we work. And in what I've learned in my meditation is how the mind interacts with the world outside and how we store memories in our memory track. A lot are beautiful, but some are unhealthy, and they're like a shadow over my life in the present. You know how the memories just emerge, and they're like a shadow over enjoying life in the present. And so how does the mind work? And the mind is such an extraordinary thing. You know, some research, if you Google the mind, and as you know today, just everything lies on Google. Some researchers say in a waking day of 16 hours, you create around 70,000 thoughts. Please don't ask me how they counted them, because I've got no idea. But that's a lot of thoughts. And another researcher says in a minute you can speak about 125 words, but you can think about 500. You know how your mind is doing many jobs? And it also says in psychology that your mind is aware on 7 different levels at any given moment. In other words, like me, I'm speaking to you, I'm thinking what I might say next, I'm watching your reaction. I can see people coming in and out of the door at the back. You know how your mind is processing so much information. And also the way the mind works is that the sense organs take the information and throw it up on the screen of the mind. Imagine there's a screen behind me. So what you see and what you hear, that information goes up on the screen of your mind. Your intellect is that faculty assessing all the data. And almost instantly you make decisions, you do an action. And then the action is recorded on your subconscious. And so the amazing thing is that we are all sitting here in the present, but we carry this incredible database of our past in our subconscious. As I said, so much of it is good. But sometimes we've had impulsive actions under the influence of anger, dislike, lack of self-respect, and it's recorded memories in my memory track that I later regret. And then these things come and disturb my mind at different times. Sometimes some regrets fade in time. After some years, they just go. Some regrets aren't present, but occasionally, you know how life triggers something and a memory just comes back, just quickly into your mind? Or others just seem to live incredibly strongly, inside your consciousness. And I would say that there's, so many layers of regret that we've all collected over time. There are regrets about the things that I have done, and the effect of that is guilt and shame. I don't know about you, but I think guilt makes you feel weaker than almost anything, because it's almost like I've compromised my own truth and I feel so uncomfortable inside. And how to heal when I do those sorts of things. And I think honesty and apologizing are often powerful ways of starting a process of healing. And I remember once I was in India and I met a man who actually I did a little video interview with, who told me a long story, and if I told you the whole story, we'd be here for a few hours tonight, and I'm sure you don't want that. But he actually got involved in a dispute between villages. One thing led to another, and he ended up living in the hills, and he was constantly, he was called a dacoit in India. Dacoit is like a robber, a highway robber. And for 20 years, he had a band of people. He went to jail, and in jail, he was reformed. And he carried a huge regret about how he had lived his life. And he said that he met this social worker who helped him reform his character. That he then went back to all the villages where he had done bad things and apologized to everyone and sought forgiveness. He said still it didn't completely resolve his regret, but to a certain extent it did. I met another man in Australia, and he began to practice meditation. And when he did, he also said he had this regret that his best friend and he had fallen out. They had had some differences. And he wanted to resolve it, so he rang his friend. And you know how these days mobile phones have the names on them? So his friend saw his name, he wouldn't answer the phone. And he tried and tried. And what he was saying to his friend, okay, we had our differences, let's finish them, let's get over them, let's move on, let's finish our regrets. But when he really looked deeply at himself, he said he was still thinking that I was right and you were wrong. You know how sometimes we say to people, come on, let's resolve, let's be happy, but still inside I think I'm right and you were wrong. And you know what he said? When he did the deep work of letting go this thought that I was right and you were wrong, that actually his friend began to answer his phone calls and they were able to resolve. But I would say equally, we regret things we have done, but I would say often we regret things which we haven't done. And I would say especially around the death of a loved one, it really makes us reflect our whole relationship with that person. And so many times I've heard people say, I really wish I'd expressed how much I loved that person. You know, when you're with people, I think our fears, you know, if I'm really vulnerable, I really express what I feel, we think sometimes people will feel I'm a little bit strange or a little bit this or a little bit that. So we hold back our real feelings. And sometimes we regret, I didn't really show my respect and my appreciation for who you were. And those feelings can come really strongly. And I remember once there was a lady also, because in Sydney I've worked with a lot of people at the time of passing when they have terminal illness and so on. And this lady, you know, she had been, you know, she had cancer. And when she was told that she wasn't going to survive, I went to see her in the hospital. And I have it recorded in my mind. You know how some experiences in life is like a video in your mind. And she was in a hospital, and it was just after sunset, and I'd walked down this long passage into her room. And I sat down. It was so silent in her room, and I could just see her silhouette lying in the bed, so still. So I went in so quietly, and I just sat down, and I didn't say a word. And after about 3 minutes, a voice came from the bed, and she said, Charlie, I love you. And quite honestly, that was so uncharacteristic of this lady. And you know what had happened? She once she realized she wasn't going to survive, it's like she let go all her fears and she just decided to be the person she really wanted to be. She became so loving. She really expressed all her love. And she said to me, I wish I'd been like this my whole life. You know how sometimes because of what we feel society will think, what my family will think, what my friends will think, so I remain living within all my fears and insecurities, so I don't really express what I really feel to the people I love. And so I would say just as much we have regret about things we do as things we often don't do. And also sometimes we have regret about the way I've lived my life. And you know, they say the most common regret is, I wish I had the courage to be true to myself and not just try to please other people. Anyone here ever had that thought? Because it's a hard thing in life, isn't it? Sometimes our families, our society has such an expectation. And so often you spend your whole life dancing to the tune of what they want me to be and how they think I should live. And yet I compromise myself. And you know, they say it's the most common regret that most of us have, that I didn't live according to my truth. And it's not that if I live according to my truth that I will probably hurt the people I love. But I think it's so important to really follow my heart and live according to my truth. And you know, one of the greatest regrets in this area is around education. A lot of people regret, I wish I'd studied something different. Anyone here feel like that? Oh, the whole room. That's also one of a huge regret, that we actually allow myself just to dance, you know, to the tune of really what others want me to be. And even there's regrets that I haven't lived up to my own expectations. You know, sometimes I think in life we have very high expectations. I often feel incredibly unrealistic expectations. Or even there's a regret that I haven't really lived up to the expectations of others, that I feel their expectations, that I haven't been the best husband, the best wife, the best mother, the best child, or whatever. And so all of these things sometimes compound, you know, in my subconscious. And I think there's so many regrets which all of us have. And for me, a part of the spiritual journey, the inner journey, is first of all to be honest with myself. We all do things that perhaps we regret. It's a part of life, but a part of life also is to implement strategies to heal myself. Because things have happened in the past, but in the present, it's taking the joy and happiness out of how I live and my experience of life. And one of the things I feel one of the first steps is actually to develop or reflect on my relationship with my conscience. Because I feel that helps me not do any further actions in my life that I will regret. And you know, the conscience is an incredible thing. It somehow sits inside of us. I don't know whether you've reflected on it. I think it's like a little vessel of truth, which all of us hold inside of us. And I would say the greatest pain in life is when I go against my own truth. I have a value, I have a principle, I have something important to me. And yet if I compromise it, how do you feel about yourself? Can you respect yourself if you actually go against your own principle or your own truth? And this is why I would say your conscience can be your own best friend or your own worst enemy. In the sense that if my desires or my ego pull me out of my truth and I fulfill a desire, then that guilt is something which it's like a karmic effect of going against my truth. And once I was in a country and I had to run a seminar with some government officials. And it was a 3-day seminar. I spent some time, and at the end of it, one man asked to speak to me. And he said that he had been a government official, quite high, and he wanted to send his children to the UK for education. And he didn't have enough money. So he said he took bribes. And he did it for years and years and years. And in his own words, he said, my children have got a wonderful education. My children are well established. They're doing well. But I've ruined my own life. He said, I have so much regret about what we do. And you know how sometimes a desire for something makes me compromise my truth or my principles? But we suffer later for going against my truth. I often feel that really honesty is one of the best policies that helps me deal with regret. Or my conscience can be my own best friend. And this, in a way, prevents me doing further actions that I will regret in the future. Because my experience is, if you hold a truth, for me, one of my principles, if I can say, which is really important to me, is to respect other people, And so if I can feel my thoughts even crossing that line, it's like a little red light goes off in my head. Be careful. Do you know that part of your conscience that warns you? It's like a warning light. You're stepping over the line. You're stepping out of your truth. You're stepping out of your principles. Be careful. Because when you do, later, the regret, the guilt, the shame, that pain is much greater pain than anything else. So I feel that the first step really is to really value my conscience and make my conscience my own best friend, so it warns me when my desires or my ego is pulling me out of my truth. But I would say the second thing is really at the heart of the spiritual process, and that is to really develop a relationship with my true self. Because I think that when I go deep, I begin to see that I regret things when I'm under the influence of my ego or my lack of self-respect. And when I'm really connected to my true self, it's like I'm in a state of self-respect. And that's one of the most powerful things to help me deal with feelings of regret. But when I look inside, I see that in most of us today, we have 3 personalities. I'd say 2 of them are experts at regret. They easily feel regret at a very small thing. But one of them starts to heal the feelings of a burdened conscience or those feelings of regret. And the first personality I call the eye of arrogance or the eye of superiority. And this personality takes its whole sense of identity from my temporary body. Who am I? I see myself as a whole set of labels. I'm a male, I'm a female, I'm from this country, I'm from that country, I'm from this religion, I'm from that religion. I see myself as a whole set of labels. Mahatma Gandhi once said, labels are for jars, they're not for people. I like that little quote. But when this I is ruling my inner system, I have a whole thinking, feeling, behavioral structure. I compare with others and I think, I am better, I know more, I am right. The way I see things is right. And when it comes into my feelings, that's when I easily feel insulted, disrespected, not valued, excluded, sensitive. Anyone here sensitive? I think we're all a bit sensitive. I don't think I know we're all a bit sensitive. So it's like when you sow the seed of a false identity, it grows a whole false tree in my thinking. And when my ego is ruling my inner system, I have a lot of regret, mainly about how others have treated me, what others have done to me. Because often when we have ego, we're blind to myself. We can't see me, we can only see you. But actually, my ego is a front for the second eye. And this eye also takes its whole sense of identity from my temporary body, all the labels. And it thinks others are better, others know more, others don't love me, others don't respect me, others don't value me. And when it comes into my feelings, I feel hopeless, inadequate, inferior, unworthy, depressed. And in psychology, depression is like a sadness that my dream in life to be loved and valued hasn't happened. But in spirituality, depression is like a mourning for the loss of my true identity. Who am I really? Because I would say so much of this guilt, shame, regret comes because I've lost the awareness of who I really am. And when I'm under the influence of the eye of inferiority, a lack of self-respect, that's when I do a little mistake and I make it into such a huge thing. You know, I exaggerate it, I blow it up. I tell myself you're a failure, people don't like you. And I just have a whole list of regrets about myself. And almost anything I can regret, because the lower my self-esteem, the more regret I have in life. And that's why the third eye, when I'm under the influence of my ego and lack of self-respect, what does that mean? One day you're up, the next day you're down. 1 hour you're up, the next, you know that fluctuation, the highs and lows of life, it's exhausting. The third eye is the original eye. And this is, I think, getting to the seed of the healing of feelings about my past. Who am I? I am a soul. There's many different names, the spirit, the Atma, whatever you like to call it. And the soul is a wonder. The soul is just a point. And the soul sits in the front of the brain. And in mathematics, a point exists, but it has no length, breadth, or width. The soul is so subtle. I am the soul. But when I forget myself, and I come under the influence of my ego of superiority or my ego of inferiority, I come under the influence of negative thoughts, negative feelings, anger, dislike, hatred, and then I perform actions which I regret later. You know, you start to feel and you start to blame people. And then you do an action and then you think, oh, why did I say that? Has anyone ever felt that? The instant you say something and you see the effect and you think, oh no, why did I let that out of my mouth? And really, it's like, for the long term, when I sow the seed of my authentic and original self, who am I as the soul, then I start to come from an authentic place of peace. The natural state of the self is peace. And I often feel it's like coming home to a place inside where you absolutely accept yourself, you take the pressure off yourself to look good, to be noticed, to impress people. You know how sometimes you feel, I've got to have an image, I've got to be out there. You just begin to accept yourself. And I would say the more I go back to that place of truth, the less chance I will perform an action that later I will regret. I perform actions according to my elevated self, not actions according to my unelevated self, if there is such a word, I'm not sure. So I think first I need to prevent further regret by this relationship with my conscience. Secondly, I need to know who I am. But thirdly, I think, why do we have this world we have? No matter where you are in the world at the moment, people are complaining. You know, someone just told me now, I flew to Dubai 4 or 5 days ago via Hong Kong. And apparently I was the last flight that they let through from. You know, this world, what is happening in our world, we have so much compassion for people. But my experience is that if I lack respect for myself, will I respect you? I don't think so. Will I respect society? Will I respect the environment? I don't think so. The seed of what we are seeing in this world is that this first relationship in life has become so damaged. And I would say, you know, what we're seeing out there is a reflection of how we treat ourselves internally. And to me, the first relationship in life is with me. And if that is unhealthy or dysfunctional, it pollutes my relationships with others, it pollutes my performance in the workplace, and even the data today says it affects my physical health as well. My emotions have a huge effect on my physical well-being as well. And so the long-term strategy, I feel, to deal with regret, to deal with guilt, to deal with shame, is to actually rebuild my self-respect. And what is self-respect? To me, it's my own evaluation of the inner me. You know, most of us get our self-respect from our business card, our title, our role, our family, our wealth, our possessions. Everything external gives me a sense of identity. But actually, you know, really, I've seen that sometimes some people can be universally loved and they can't love themselves. Can be universally respected but can't respect themselves. Can be a high achiever and constantly feel it is never ever good enough. No matter how well you do, it is never ever good enough. And this is where I think the deep work I feel spiritually is to break down these beliefs we hold about ourselves. If I hold, you know, sometimes it's almost like we grow up with a perception of myself. If I believe I'm not really lovable, people won't love me. No matter how much love people show me, I can't feel it. If I believe that I'm not good enough, no matter, as I was saying, how well you do, you always have this pressure on yourself. And so we hold these deep beliefs about myself. And in a sense, self-respect is stepping back into my sense of self-value. And when I'm in a sense of self-respect, I once again will perform more elevated actions. And even if I do an action against my truth, rather than beat myself up for it, hate myself for it, dislike myself, put myself down, I just can say, well, how will I learn for the future? I need to learn so that I don't do this again. And if I need to apologize to other people and say I'm sorry, then so be it. Because sometimes apologies can clear the account of regret with other people. But regret with myself, how do I clear that account? Is it easy to forgive the self? It's not so easy, I don't think, to be able to really forgive myself. And yet, forgiveness is a state really where I really need to let go all the conditions in my mind that stop me being loving. And this is where I think so much of dealing with regret is rebuilding my self-esteem. So much of the spiritual path is rebuilding my self-esteem. And so that whether I have past regrets, I can learn from them, and in the present I don't do actions so that I will regret in the future. And I'm feeling at the moment that the way the world is that so much is going on, and I think of the world like 7.5 billion human beings. It's incredible, isn't it? And if each human being is pumping out 70,000 thoughts a day, it's like we're living in this thought soup. We're all living in a thought soup. A lot of those thoughts are thoughts of anxiety, depression, regret, guilt. And if I don't look after my mind, what do? I absorb it. Have you ever felt that you wake up in the morning, there's nothing really wrong in your life, but you just feel empty? You just feel a bit flat, you feel nothing. It's like no real meaning or whatever, because we absorb the atmosphere of the world. And if there's anything I feel that these sort of evenings can produce, it's that I have to look after my mind. In Australia, one of my closest friends is the CEO of the health department in Melbourne, in Victoria. And all their money, advertising money, is going into mental and emotional health. If you look at all the data around the world at the moment, mental and emotional health is really suffering badly. We have to look after our own health. And to me, having a little practice like meditation, and there's 3 ways you can do meditation, I feel. What is meditation really? In one sense, it's just thinking well. It's learning which thoughts create well-being and which thoughts make me feel weak. It's almost that simple. And then editing out those thoughts that make me feel weak. I know I'm making it sound a bit easier than it is, but fundamentally that's what it is. So you can do it like a hobby. Every so often you come to an evening like this, it's lovely, but we go home, and as soon as we leave the door, we think in our old way again. And that's when sometimes people meditate like a discipline. And that really means that I meditate and I relax. And I calm down and I feel really centered. But as soon as I finish, my thoughts revert to my old thinking once again. And now I feel when it's a lifestyle, and what that really means that I put a little structure into every day. To me, meditation is an attitude to life. It's a decision I make that I am going to live as a peaceful soul. That's who I fundamentally want to be. And the more you practice, you can't underestimate the influence of your mind on yourself, the atmosphere, and people around you. Just like I was saying, we live in the thought soup, right? And thoughts aren't seen, but they're felt. I often feel, imagine if each time you thought, colours sprayed out of your mind. Just imagine. So I'm sitting up the front here, and if I had a thought of love or peace, it would just waft through the room. Beautiful, soft colours. I'm not going to do it. I wish I could. Or if I had a negative thought, a big, you can see my thoughts. Imagine how attentive you would be. We can't see the thoughts, but we feel them. And if you actually learn that the quality of your life depends on the quality of your thinking. And meditation is just the art to create and sustain quality thinking. And when we do that, it's like those quality thoughts create feelings of peace, feelings of well-being. It sustains you, it sustains the atmosphere, and it sustains the people you love. The question that so many people have today when on all our meditation centers is, I'm worried about my family. I'm worried about one of my relatives. I'm worried, And there's two types of support. There's emotional support, where you keep talking to people, encouraging them, you'll be okay, it's good. But spiritual support is when the perfume of your mind, the fragrance of your peaceful, loving, pure thoughts create a vibration. You cannot underestimate the power of an elevated mind. And if you really want to feel better in your life and really serve the people you love and sustain them, what you give from your mind is much more powerful than what comes out of your mouth. You will create a feeling. And that's where I think that when we begin to understand this, if we develop our own practice, we strengthen ourselves. And I would say the ability to learn from mistakes, learn from regrets, let go regrets, forgive myself, all of these things become much more easy when I have a regular practice to really sustain myself. Because we can see what is happening in our world at the moment. And to me, an act of self-love is to do something regularly for myself. I think it's really important. Anyway, I'm just looking at the time, and I did want to have a little bit of time for some questions or comments or whatever. Please feel free. If anyone would like to ask something, and then we'll finish off with some little bit of meditation. Yes, thank you.
When we speak about regrets, you said it is there in our subconscious mind. So does this carry forward to the other layers also, or is it just for this layer, the regrets that we have?
I'd say most of it is from this life, most of our regrets, because they're things in our conscious mind, they're actions and behaviors, that I've done. But, people are different. Some people do a bad action and they don't have much conscience. And you know what they say? If you do an action many times, you even don't realize it's a bad action. If you tell a little lie once, you think, oh, I regret that, I won't do it again. If you tell a lie 10 times, 20 times, 100 times, you actually lose the realization you're even telling a lie. And that's the effect, the karmic effect of doing a wrong action many times. You even lose the awareness that you're performing a wrong action. I do think, though, that sometimes I've seen that honesty is a great power to clear some things of the past. And if I can share something I did once in my life, when I began to meditate, I actually didn't have that many things, but there were some things that sometimes when you meditate, they come on the screen of your mind, things you've said or done. And I sat down once and I wrote a long essay, in a way, of all the things that I regretted from the past. And actually it's a good thing to do, because when you're honest, I think a lot of it, the honesty, when you're not trying to justify a behavior, prove myself right, but I actually say, yes, I was under the influence of something wrong. I did an action that's wrong, if I've apologized to you. But for me to clear my account, honesty is one of the great powers too. Whether I'm honest with others, whether I'm honest with God, or honest with myself, or all three. I think that is a real power to sort of lighten the load. But I'd say mostly it's from this life. Yes, please.
Actually, thanks for for everything that you got today. I think it really makes sense. My question would be, what would be your advice to somebody who is possibly at at an age in life where it's surrounded with a lot of we all are basically with emotional, physical, mental stress, but in a discovery to find out who am I and how do I actually. I'm not happy with whatever I am today, but I know where I want to be. I'm fearful of the journey that perhaps I have to take to go there and to lead my life to that which perhaps will make me more as a happier and a content person. What would be your advice for that fearfulness, the factor that will possibly cover yourself, so that, okay, how do I do it? How do I go there?
Yes, it's an amazing thing that more than anything we want to change and become the person we want, but more than anything we're so afraid of it at the same time. Because what we know is it's in our comfort zone. Even if I'm not happy, I know it, But actually, I think what really the spiritual path is stepping away from all the conditioning I've collected to go back to the essential and real me. And as I was saying that at the moment, my ego, which is an attachment to a false sense of who I am. My ego is really a sense that, who am I? I'm a temporary body. The more I think I'm a temporary body, what happens? A huge fear of loss. And sometimes I think my sense of identity, you think how we live life. You're born and you're told this is your name, this is your mum, this is your dad, this is your brothers, your sisters, your country, your job, your career, and then your children, your grandchildren. You think in 1 second that will all go. And the fear, because we've built this temporary sense of self. We've invested in a lifetime. But actually, that's not really who I am. What's constant in all this change is the soul. I am actually a soul. And the wonder is that the soul has no gender, no nationality, none of the things that create differences between people. And it's not like you're going to something you don't know. You're actually coming back into who you really are. There is no greater investment in a sense of well-being than to know and experience who you are. And many times people say, well, what is the aim of meditation? And what would you say? What's the aim of meditation? To be peaceful. 99% of people say that. I would say the aim of meditation is to know and experience who I am. The automatic byproduct of when you are in that state, you feel so calm. My own experience, I meditate every day. I've done so for 45 years. I've never missed a day. And it's not like it's just been like that. I wouldn't be telling you the truth. It's a learning curve. But the investment in learning about who you are, learning why you have negative thoughts of regret, and why they're so powerful, learning about your inner world is the best investment at life at the moment because, as I said, we are incredibly educated about the world out there and incredibly uneducated about the world inside. It's amazing. I once met a British scientist, really famous, and he said to me something like, I'm an intellectual giant and an emotional dwarf, he said. I mean, he was very honest, wasn't he? But unfortunately, that's the world we've created. We're so developed intellectually, but often a little problem comes and we just crumble. We have no tools because we've lost our spiritual power. And that's where, when I learn who I am, I learn the power of thought, I take responsibility that each thought is my creation. Because often when someone's rude, difficult, behaves badly, I blame them and then I accuse you of the bad thoughts I'm having in my mind. That's how naive we are. But it's my thoughts which are torturing me. The more you take responsibility, you're taking back the power in your life. And I can say anyone can become more peaceful. You just have to have a little bit of courage and a little bit of consistency. And I always say to people, try something like meditation if you feel comfortable. It's only a loving offer. And practice it for 3 months and see the effect in your life. Yeah.
So thanks for the nice insight you gave today. You said something about regret. I think regret is ongoing. Whatever regrets you have till now, you might end up getting more regrets in life if you do not check it. When you are saying that you should live with honesty, when you live with honesty in real world, you live with relationships which surrounds you. A lot of time it happens that too. And you also said one thing, that you cannot make everyone happy, or you should not live to make the other one happy. When we don't live to make the other one happy, we ultimately cultivate more regrets. Right? If we sometimes it happens that, between the relationships, when you cannot be honest sometimes. If you are honest, it will hamper the relationship. And ultimately that will create one more regret to you. So all these three things, when you maintain a relationship, you be honest and you also don't live to impress others. It is a dilemma where how we can kind of maintain all three together.
Pardon?
Be true to yourself. That's the best thing.
That's true. There's a saying, you can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all of the people all of the time. And, as I said right at the beginning, scratch the surface of most people. There are so many stories about how I've been treated, what people have done to me, what people have said to me. So much unfinished business inside our heads at the moment. I find that the most powerful thing in relationships is first to heal the relationship with me. Because if you look at a relationship between two people, if both are not really happy, what's going to happen? And really, the first relationship in life is with me. And when I start to take responsibility for my thoughts and my feelings, and if another party does too, that really improves things. And the way you really improve relationships is, I would say, in communication, in the sense that, research shows that when you communicate, like I'm talking at the moment, and they say there's 3 levels that you communicate on. And relationships is almost all communication. One is what you say. The other is your body language. That's the fashionable language for your facial expression. And thirdly are your vibrations. Do you know that your face, your vibrations account for 90% of the impact, 80 to 90% of any relationship? And a lot of people, when you have 2 messages, one is what you hear and the other is what you feel, you will always trust what you feel. And what happens is that, we often hold critical thinking in our mind. When someone comes in front of me, I say, "Oh, how nice to see you." And I'm thinking, last week you said this to me, You know what it happens. People feel that. People feel that. I can tell you I've experimented so much with the power of attitude. If your attitude sees virtue in people, sees good in people, I can almost guarantee relationships will improve dramatically. Because it's my inner attitude. And even if your inner attitude is one of love and respect, you can be honest with people and they won't feel offended. Because it's more the vibrations behind the words than the words themselves. They say there's two types of criticism. You know, there's constructive criticism. And constructive is when, you know, you love somebody or somebody's maybe criticizing you. You know they love you. They really, like your mum sometimes, she really loves you. And so she's saying something to help you, and you don't take it as a negative thing. Someone else may say the same words to you, identically, but they're angry with you. They're upset. So the feeling is the power in relationship. And that's why when you meditate, your thoughts and feelings are a higher vibration, and then that feeling people feel. I often say to managers in companies, you can be the cleverest speaker. You can be so articulate. You can know all the contemporary management techniques. But if your attitude is negative or critical, or you see what's wrong with the people, you won't be really respected and you won't get very far. It's so much happens in the power of attitude. In my relationships are all about the subtle thoughts and feelings. And one woman I remember who, she was the leader of the Brahma Kumaris, World Spiritual University. And she was extraordinary. She had so much self-respect. She respected everybody. And everybody felt close to her. And is there anything more beautiful in life when there's the give and take of love? That's what life is. That's the richness of life. And then I think the more that happens, even if things go wrong, and you easily overcome your regrets. I find the more self-respect can resolve regrets quickly. Low self-respect, regrets just stay in your head for years and years and years. So it's not so much dealing with the regret, it's improving my self-value, my self-respect. We can have a few more quick questions and then, yes.
You mentioned about meditation. Typically it's to be done at one specific time and most days what we heard about. So, but you said something different. So, could you just elaborate on that?
I'm sorry, can you just...
The meditation that you mentioned, you said it need not be done at a specific time, it need not be disciplined, right? So what is that you're suggesting?
I'm sorry, maybe what I said, I've made a little bit of misunderstanding. I was just saying that it's actually good to have, times of the day. The best time is in the morning, because if you wake up and you have elevated thoughts, those elevated thoughts are the seeds of your actions. So if you have a high state of mind, your actions and behavior coming out of that the whole day, the way you treat your children, your family, you interact with people is quite sweet and loving. And I meditate every morning and I meditate every evening. But what I was saying, I don't only just meditate then stop and my mind reverts to my old thinking. I try to carry the attitude throughout the day. That I really try to live as a peaceful soul. That's who I am. That's my sense of identity.
So what you're saying is don't do it like an activity. It should not be just for the sake of it.
I think initially it's important to do that because you need to practice. It's an art form. But the more you practice, the more it's like who you are as a person. Your mind remains calm.
You
Just I'm sorry, there was a few people who had just put up their hands. I'm sorry. Yes.
You have given some very good examples of what a regret is.
Sorry?
You have given some good examples of what a regret is.
Yes.
When I talk, I say something in case it's a regret. When you lose somebody, possibly it's a regret. But there are some decisions in life as a family man you take for good of the family, for the better of the family, which goes wrong. How do you overcome that regret? For example, my own case may take, I've taken some business decisions which went wrong, which is affecting my family in a certain percentage. Now, how do you then come and overcome that particular thing? It's a positive thing, but it went wrong.
You know, I think that, sometimes we regret the outcome of things like you just described. And sometimes in life, your intent, you love your family deeply. When you took that decision, your intent was only for one thing, to help your family. And yet sometimes things go completely wrong. One man once told me that he helped a friend was struggling, he helped him start a business, and he gave so much time, money and energy to help his friend, and everything went wrong, and his friend blamed him. He said, I went there to help him with my friend, and it ended up a mess, a complete mess. I would say there's a deeper layer working here, which is the deep philosophy of karma. It's to do with things which have happened in the past that are playing out in the present. And in a way, when you understand that deeply, you can't regret too much, because the most powerful thing of an action is your intent. Your intent was the highest. And yet things went off. So you can't really, off in a different direction, you can't really blame yourself in a way, because it happens to all of us, these things. And this is like a whole nother evening to talk about. Because the stories of the past, the actions of the past sometimes influence the outcomes of the present, if I can say. Okay, she's slowly walking up the front. So maybe very quickly, if it's okay.
You mentioned there were 3 levels of communication.
Yes.
I'm a bit intrigued by the third one, which you mentioned, vibrations. Because I know there's body language, there is voice modulation, and of course the words, what you say. What is this vibration, and can you elaborate a little more?
I'd say vibrations are the feelings of them. Thoughts create feelings. When you meet somebody, do you instantly get a feeling from them? I think we all do. That's their vibration. And that's where sometimes we're so innocent. We think our thoughts are private. They're not. They're not at all. In fact, your thoughts are like a big billboard on the street. Everyone can see them. Because people feel those vibrations. So if your thoughts are negative or critical, actually people feel them. Some people wonder why people don't love me, why people don't come close to me. Because my thoughts are like critical or negative, it keeps people at bay. If you love, your thoughts are loving, and you see good in people, 95%, maybe 98% of the time, people will come close, and you will enjoy that loving interaction. Vibrations, we all work off vibrations. Everybody. Can we?
Thank you very much for your nice look at this subject. I just want to ask whether there is a relation between the regret and the forgiveness. Whether you forgive other or other forgive you. Whether it's important to reach a good clearance of regret to pass with this forgiveness.
So the question is whether you forgive others or others forgive you. Well, we have no control over others. But forgiving me, but I feel, for me, I sometimes feel I want to clear any mistakes I've made. And actually, sometimes you apologize to people and they don't accept your apology.
Yes.
There's not much you can do, but you've done the right thing. If you say from your heart, I am really sorry, I did make a mistake, or I did do this. And sometimes that absolutely touches people when it's genuine. But sometimes people are so hurt by things, they don't want to accept your apology. But at least you've done the right thing from your side. You've honestly realized yourself and you've tried to clear something. But we have no control over other people's behavior. My sphere of influence is myself. And spirituality says, at least I should do the right thing by my truth.
Thank you so much. I would like to humbly request our dear brother to take us through a 1-minute meditation journey so we can all contribute through our mind to the surroundings and what is events happening around the world, give good vibrations.
Let me sit with a determined thought to follow the thoughts suggested. Each thought is my creation. When I realize this deeply, I understand that no matter what the situation, no matter what others' behavior, ultimately I choose the thoughts I think. Meditation is the art to learn to create elevated thoughts. And to begin those elevated thoughts, I experience who I am. Just visualize yourself as the soul, a radiant point of light sitting in the front of the brain. I am like an actor performing through this costume. But now I let go all the labels of my body. Just feel yourself stepping back, withdrawing to this point, and feel I am a peaceful soul. I am a peaceful soul. The more I know and experience who I am, I take back my self-respect. I take back my inner power. And then when things happen, I learn rather than regret. To help me in my life, if I wake up each morning, before I start to think about yesterday or worry about today, sit quietly. become self-aware and create the perfume of peace in your mind and radiate that perfume to everyone you meet. This is a beautiful life. Thank you very much.
So, as how we experienced now, if we can make meditation as a hobby and as an attitude in our life, I'm sure that we will be able to tap into our authentic self and to that honest quality to understand the in-depth of how we can overcome and be free of regret. So in appreciation of all of you being here today with us, we would like to invite our director, Loving Didi, Jyoti Didi, to the stage. Jyoti Didi is our director for Raj Yoga Center UAE and Oman. So let us welcome her onto the stage to share with us something very sweet. And also, in appreciation from all of us, we would also like to thank our loving Charlie Hogg. So maybe we can show our thank you in a different method today by waving the hands silently. It's like a silent thank you for taking us through a lovely experiential journey. So Jyoti Didi will share with you sweets, and it is wrapped with lovely values, which you can see it for yourself and practice each value per day when we are practicing meditation. And when you're leaving from the hall, we have our events calendar, which has upcoming events. You can go through that, where meditation course for beginners are going to happen, and also Monday talk, and also special event for kids, enlightened kids from the age of 6 to 11. The next topic is on determination. And more art of letting go is for the Monday talk. So please do remember to take the events calendar. Thank you so much and wish you all a loving and peaceful evening.